This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
Welcome to the American Theater Wing seminars on working in the theater. These seminars are coming to you from the City University, the Graduate Center of New York, located in Times Square, right in the center of the theater. I'm Isabel Stevenson, and I'm president of the American Theater Wing. And the American Theater Wing, as you know, created the Tony Awards, which is the highest honor awarded for excellence in the theater. I'd like to point out that it is for excellence and not for the longest run, the blockbuster, the most quotable quotes of a critic. It is for having achieved a degree of excellence in the craft of theater. But the Wing is more than the Tonys. It has always stood for much more. It is the longest ongoing organization that serves the theater and the theater community through the theater. From the days of our acting school, our legendary stage door canteens, to our current programs of bringing live professional theater into nursing homes and hospitals, bringing live professional theater into schools through our Saturday Theater for Children program. We stand for theater. We stand for professional theater. Today's seminars are an outgrowth of our school, and they are designed to give you an insight into the theater and how it works, how the performers, the playwrights, the producers, the directors, the scene designers, the press agents, everyone works together to bring to the audience that most important element in the theater, quality in the theater. Today's panel is on performance. And I would like to introduce Jean Dalrymple, who is member of the board of the American Theater Wing, but also has done almost every one of the elements that I have mentioned. She has been a playwright, a director, and is an author as well. And Brendan Gill, who is a witty, wise, wonderful man, and more than a critic, an observer in the theater. And I'm proud to say a member of the board of the American Theater Wing. And they, in turn, will introduce our panel of performers to you. Thank you for being here.
I wish Isabel would be able to put that introduction to me to music. It sounds perfectly wonderful. A friend of mine who had a certain measure of distinction recently was being introduced, and the person introducing him said, "But of course so-and-so needs no introduction," and he instantly broke out, "Oh, give it to me anyway, I like to hear it." In any event, on my far right is Aidan Quinn, who has in his day wonderfully already played Hamlet, who has played in A Fool for Love, and most recently is in A Lie of the Mind, the great Sam Shepard play. And immediately on my right is Glenn Close, who has one of the shortest names on Broadway. It's perfectly wonderful for marquee purposes to have so short a name.
Except they all think I'm a man.
and has appeared, of course, in Barnum and The Real Thing, and is currently performing in The Benefactors. And her movies include The Big Chill and Jagged Edge. You would wonder which of them came first. Jean.
Marlo Thomas. I think everyone knows her because everyone has seen her on television, especially recently in Nobody's Child, where she was particularly wonderful. Her debut on Broadway was in Thieves, but she had already starred in London in several productions. She'd been introduced to London by Mike Nichols, who is also the director of her current play, Social Security. And right here is Maurice Hines, and I'm sure you all saw him too in Cotton Club. And we also saw him in Sophisticated Ladies with his brother, and they were simply astonishing. And then just recently he did Uptown, It's Hot, which he not only appeared in, but he wrote it, conceived it, and directed it. Maurice Hines.
One of the things maybe you introduced right off the bat, Glenn, is the question of what names can mean in terms of gender. As far as that goes, Aidan must have had, to some extent, the same problem, because if people don't know you, how can you tell what Aidan can mean? As to start with Aidan, has that really been a problem, or has it not?
No, not really. People mispronounce the name a lot, you know. Arden, Adrian, that kind of thing.
But it's a fairly common name in Ireland?
Yes, yes.
But not a common name here at all. So
No,
I don't think I've ever heard that
no.
before.
Yeah, it's a very common name in Ireland.
Now, did God intend you, Glenn, to be named Glenn, or did you find
Absolutely.
that?
I was named after my godmother.
And that was her last name?
No, it was her first name.
Oh, it was?
Yes.
Because the problem's been going on for generations.
Yes,
then.
absolutely.
Because Glenn is a common Southern name as a last name, but I don't think I ever heard it as a first name.
I always thought it sounded like a football player myself.
But at the beginning of your career, you had a choice whether you wanted to have this mystification or this temporary mystification exists, but you stuck to that name.
Oh, yes. I've
And
loved
it's a
my
great
name because it's a kind of a strange name, and I think it made me feel a little different, or helped me feel different.
Which is an indispensable attribute of acting.
It helps, I think.
Yes, it's easy to remember, and as you said before, you can put it on a marquee very, very easily.
But I still get a lot of letters addressed to Mr. Glenn Close, and the ones that really make me laugh is when they say, "Dear Mr. Close, I love your work. Would you send me an autograph?" Say, "Oh, sure."
Yeah. Aidan, that is your Irish name. Does it mean anything?
Fiery.
That's what I thought, yeah.
He said with satisfaction.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually what it means in Gaelic, I think.
Mm-hmm. I thought so.
But who would ever name a child something that meant sluggish?
Yeah.
Besides, everybody in Ireland is the king who pretends to. Now, you were actually born in Ireland?
No, I've lived there on and off all my life. My parents are from there, and I lived there when I was small, and I went to school there for a few years, but I wasn't born there.
So you had the Gaelic, or a little of it?
A little of it.
Yeah. Ireland tries still to be a great theatrical place, or Dublin does, but it's not possible.
No, there's very little support financially, and also very little training for actors in Ireland. There's tremendous natural talent, storytellers, but there really isn't any training, or not enough of it.
And even when the Abbey in its greatest days, those actors were working by day as sales clerks and all kinds of things. There was no money in it for them at all. It was really for the love of the art.
Right.
Well, where did you grow up to become an actor?
In Chicago. In Chicago.
And how old were you actually when you played that Hamlet?
I was 25, and I just turned 26 after we opened, so I did it a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because there's always the threat in playing Hamlet that the person playing it will be too old by the time he gets around to being permitted to play it. So that's a very good age to attempt.
Yeah. I should think, Brendan, they'd be too old by the time he could remember it. It's really a feat of memory, that play. I've tried to, memorize parts of it. It's very difficult to do the whole thing. I've known people who've devoted their whole lives to learning it. I don't mean actors, but people who love it, They never have learned it. Never.
Now it's become a vogue to have female Hamlets. There are two or three of those. The odd thing for me about Hamlet or any Shakespeare is the fact that that all the women's roles had to be played by boys. I don't see how it was ever possible to have enough suspension of disbelief in those scenes in Shakespeare when a little boy is toddling about the stage and pretending to be Gertrude, How did they accept it? But they did.
Suspension of disbelief, I don't know.
But did you find it hard mastering Hamlet or not?
Oh, no. I mean, it's, it was the most enjoyable experience I've ever had as an actor. It was also the most difficult and the most exhausting. Just physically, it was also a very physical production. I would lose 3-4 pounds a night on stage,
How long did it take you to prepare for it?
I knew I was going to do the role about 7-8 months before we went into rehearsal. And we had a long rehearsal period, so I had all that time.
And you actually rehearsed for 7 or 8 months?
No. I had all that time to work myself and research and also work with the director. We would get together.
Kevin Kline, who's been playing Hamlet, and of course he is a very good athlete, indeed an acrobat. So it's helpful to him to be able to do that. In that last scene when the corpses are piling up on stage so fast, it's perfectly wonderful. But have you always been a good athlete in that sense? Because it's an extremely physical role by the time you get to the end of it.
Yeah, I was involved in athletics when I was younger and stuff. I always liked physical stuff.
Even learning defense was necessary. I think I saw Walter Hamden playing Hamlet when he was in his 50s. He wouldn't give up.
Yeah.
But the fencing was none too accurate. There was always the chance that a middle-aged actor will stab himself. They have a whole new ending to Hamlet. It's a play about suicide. What can you do?
I've been around so long that I saw John Barrymore.
No, but he was older than Aidan. He was, what, 31? Or?
In his 30s, yes. Mm-hmm.
Is he still considered the Hamlet?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
Any desire on that side to do Hamlet? Maurice?
I'd be fierce. I'd love to do Hamlet. That'd be wonderful. I would like to do. I want to get more. I've been dancing all my life. And since I'm 5 years old, I'm 42 now, it's time to make a little change. So I would love to do something like that. Yeah. You don't know how, this is very exciting for me to be here, This is very, first of all, I watch Marlo all the time on That Girl on cable. I do. So I was telling her, we were talking, and there's always a connection in life. I always find there's a connection. So I told her, the day the engagement of my brother was Gregory Hines, we broke up the act, Hines and Dad, in I think 1971. And we really needed to make a lot of money on the last job because we owed American Express $10,000. So we wanted to go to Las Vegas, and there was no opening because we weren't big stars and we were equal billing. And so it was her father that said, well, I'll take them. They owe that money. Listen, I'll take them. And we finished our act at the Sands in Las Vegas with her father. He was very nice to do that because we were in trouble, baby. I will never forget that. Yeah. And to know that she was here just to, we thanked him, and it was just wonderful.
Well, he's always helped me when I've needed 10,000. He went to the right man.
Oh, baby. He was the right man at that time.
I wonder how many people in this room owe American Express $10,000. Just a simple show of hands.
Well, my brother and I, we used to use it. We were only supposed to use it for hotels and food and those stuff. But I would buy all these shoes. I was into shoes. And my brother was into camping equipment. So we would just get, it was the first time signing. It was wonderful. You just, you know, and things just got into your hands. But we didn't know that the money had to come. And American Express makes you pay right away.
Yeah.
And, you know, like MasterCharge, you have to pay right away. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Well, that launched you, and then what?
Well, actually, I started at 5 years old dancing, tap dancing. And then the first job theatrically Gregory and I got was in The Girl in Pink Tights for Agnes DeMille.
Oh, yes.
She saw us, and David Atkinson, Charles Golan, and to be around all those ballerinas and ballet, I wanted to do that. So I'd walk all the time all turned out. All the time. Meanwhile, you know, it's funny with tap dancers walking like that. So from there, I loved theater. I got into it at Mark Hellinger Theater. It was just a one in New Haven, you know, all that stuff you do. Agnes screaming, I like that, you know, that screaming, get it right, you know. So from there, I did Hines and Dare, we did clubs. And then we broke up, and my first real experience was I got the part of Nathan Detroit in a company of Guys and Dolls with Debbie Allen was Adelaide and Leslie Uggams, who couldn't be here, was Sarah, and Richard Roundtree. And I got the part, and I said, oh, Nathan Detroit, cute, you know, cute part. I didn't know he had the book of the show. Yeah. You see, and I never had to learn dialogue in my life because we did nightclubs. And we did a lot of improvisations, Gregory and I. So I learned the whole play in a day and a half because I was so nervous about, you know, I'm working with actors here, you know. I mean, you have to be fierce. You can't jive. You got to know your lines. I'm very disciplined. I was very disciplined. I like all that structure in the theater. So I learned it all, and I must have, by the time we got to Houston, we went to St. Louis first, and I'll never forget, I walked on that stage, and it's like they tell you, I was in the wings, I said, what is my first line? I don't know my first line. It's a terrible feeling. But the minute I walked out there, I did a good job, not a great job. Because I forgot, I was in the scene and with Debbie, and she said, Maurice, that look, the panic look, where you know you do not know the next line. You know that. Baby! I said, now, I can't stop tap dancing because that ain't it. So she gave me the line. It was, you know, how actors help each other out. That was my first. And I said, I'm going to love this. Well, by the time I got to Houston, I was so fabulous. I was so wonderful in this show. I was so happy to be and doing dialogue and interaction with actors. And, oh, it was a great experience. It changed my life. It changed my light. And then I went on to Sophisticated, did Ubie, Blake, wonderful Ubie, and my brother and I did that. And I took over Sophisticated. Then I did this show, Uptown It's Hot, which, sorry to say, it did close. And from here, I'm going to do a television series and do some other things. But I love the theater. I'm so grateful and happy to have been invited here because I've been doing theater since 1978. And this is my first invitation, and I feel like a little kid. I feel like a little kid. It's so odd. It's so odd. It's so odd. I watch you all the time. You're all very witty, by the way. You're very witty.
Thank you. So Maurice, how do you feel about the theater?
Oh, I love it. And what I love about it especially is that it's a complete thing. You know, I've worked in film and television so much, and you have to come back the next day, if you're lucky, sometimes 2 weeks later, and finish up what you started before. And I love the idea that it's all in one, and you go home and you don't have to remember, you know, where you got to yesterday.
How did you start in the theater? What was your beginning?
Oh, I think Glass Menagerie, and I did a road company of Two for the Seesaw.
Did you study in California?
I studied with Sandy Meisner here originally. And then he came out to California, and I was under contract to Fox at that time, and Sandy taught all the Fox contract players, and which was a wonderful idea, except he didn't like it, and he came back to New York. But I was one of his students here, so he chose a lot of people that he'd worked with before, and it was wonderful for us out there. And so I did a lot of plays, and then Mike Nichols cast me in a London production of Barefoot in the Park, and I lived there for a year and did that. And that was wonderful too. And then
Did you study while you were in London, while you were working there?
No, but I went to the theater every minute.
That's
That was like studying.
Yes.
I saw the most wonderful productions of Flea and Her Ear and all of those wonderful, wonderful things. Black Comedy with Albert Finney, Miss Julie with Maggie Smith and Albert Finney. It was the most exciting season that I was there. And then I was discovered. And I did That Girl for 5 years. And then I came back and studied with Lee Strasberg for 4 years. I felt that I'd lost a lot working in television, in a series especially. To do the same character every week, you learn an awful lot of shortcuts. You get very clever at what you do. And you also lose enthusiasm after a couple of seasons. You know, it's like, who do you have to know to get out of here? I kind of cleaned that up for you. But after 3 seasons, it is difficult to continue to give it the same kind of spirit. And also in most television series, mine certainly, the character doesn't grow. It's a little bit like being Little Orphan Annie, you know. She didn't get more successful, you know. She didn't ever marry. You know, she just sort of stayed the same. And it's hard to, you know, go 5 years with the same storyline and never get upset that you don't get a job. That was my character, who was very cheerful about the fact that she never got hired. You know? And never seemed to, you know, I'm not anywhere near that pleasant when I'm not hired. And the relationship never worked out. So it was odd. It was like being thrown into a time tunnel. So,
well, now, when you were in England, so many English actors don't think it's necessary to do what everybody in America seems to think, which is to go to school and to go to Sandy Meisner and everybody else, Strasberg. But so many English actors affect, at least, to despise that. They all think you learn by doing.
Yes.
And you lived there for a year, so you were teaching yourself. You weren't going to school there because it really probably wasn't a school to go to.
well, I don't know. I don't know if I was clever enough to think about it. I was doing, you know, my 8 performances a week and going to the theater and just trying to, you know, stay awake, you know. And also it was the miniskirt hot time. I was also dancing in the discotheques and doing a lot of other things, and very excited to be away from home, you know, I mean, out of the country for the first time without my father calling up, who always was sure there were men growing on trees in my apartment. It was the first time I'd ever been that far away, so it was quite wonderful. I saw Mike Nichols as sort of this godfather that had taken me away from Marymount and my family. All of the things that had been stifling me. So
leaping over the wall.
Yes, I really was.
But your father was very proud of you from the beginning in making the leap.
Oh, he was always very proud. In fact, the night we opened in Barefoot was a big hit, and everybody came backstage crying and thrilled and happy and giggling, and my father had a distinct look on his face that could only be called relief. That's all. That's what he felt. It was like, oh, thank God, she's not going to throw herself out a window. This is going to be all right. Because he'd always told me that he didn't want me to be an actress. My godmother is Loretta Young, and my father, who he is, and I was just surrounded by all these, you know, actors. And the idea was really that, and even Loretta used to tell me that this is not a business for women. And so I kind of had the idea all my life that it wasn't a business for women. So I graduated as an English teacher from Southern Cal. I had, you know, I figured, well, that would give me a piece of paper to do something, because everybody had told me how, you know, no matter if you got what kind of school plays you did. And I was named the best actress in my university, and my father said, big deal. You know how many universities there are in America and how many best actresses there are? It doesn't mean anything. And so he really discouraged me. But the minute he saw that I wanted to do it, every time I would do summer stock somewhere, in Laguna, La Jolla, and all the places, the Betty Davis Theater, and all of them on the West Coast, the family would conveniently take a house nearby or stay in a hotel for 5 weeks. You know, they were very, very supportive. You know, he would say, "This is a terrible idea. Now, you know, let me go over your lines with you." You know, he was.
Are you the only member of the family who, in your generation, that acts, or are there other?
My brother's a producer. He produces Golden Girls and Benson. He's quite successful, but nobody else wanted to act. My sister wanted to sing for a while. In fact, she opened in Las Vegas, your spot. I don't really like Las Vegas. I must even have to be dragged there. But we used to have to go there at Easter when my father performed, and there's nothing stranger than Easter in Las Vegas. And my sister performed on stage, and my father and I were standing off stage hiding so that no one would see us, because I was already kind of well known at the time, and he certainly was well known. And we were watching her backstage. My father had his big black cigar in his mouth, and I said, "Oh, she's so wonderful," you know, being the emotional one. "Oh, Daddy, isn't she great?" And he said, "She'll never make it." And he was right. She quit. I mean, he said, she doesn't have the kind of drive you have," and that was the end of it.
Glenn,
I think it is true.
I heard you first as a singer. You were beautiful. Didn't you sing in Barnum?
Yes.
Yeah, beautifully, as I
Thank you.
remember. Did you start to be a singer? Or how did you
No.
want to be an actress singing?
Actress who sings.
Oh, that's good. I thought you were a singer who acts.
No, no.
Tell us about Barnum. I was fascinated by you in that particular play.
Was that your first Broadway play?
No, not
No.
at all. It's about my
No.
fifth, I think. It was the second musical I've been in. I've been in Rex, which is about Henry VIII and all the wives whose heads he cut off, and it wasn't a great subject for a musical. We tried. That was an education unto itself. But Rex was actually quite wonderful. I learned a great deal in Rex. I mean, Barnum. It was directed by Joe Layton, who was really in absolute top form.
Yeah.
And when I went to audition, my agent heard that they were looking for a New England spinster type. I hadn't done Garp, so I guess they I don't know. So I went in with absolutely no makeup, the most plain, you know, my hair pulled back, and they kind of, and then I had forgotten my music. And so I kind of stood at the piano with Cy Coleman and sang a few lines of, "I'm gonna learn to read and write." And then they called me back and they told my agent that I should try to look as pretty as possible. And then I learned that in musicals, even if you're a spinster, you still wear lashes. You know? It's different. And I got the part. I was absolutely thrilled. And it was a difficult part. I worked my tail off in that role because she was the kind of damper on this incredible man who was winning everyone's hearts and walking on tightrope.
But you made the character sympathetic, which was difficult to do.
Well, first of all, I thought that they should have the audience should believe that they loved each other very much, that there should be some sort of passion there, because that was the heart of the story.
Right.
And I'm a great believer in passion, and that if it should be there, people should believe that it's there. And Jim Dale and I got along very well, and I think we were able to achieve that. But Joe Layton taught me great things, how to really... I remember I had a first line where I had to yell down from this box, and I was too shy, you know. And Joe kept at me, and finally I did it, you know, and it was an extra dimension that I'd never kind of stepped into.
Did that continue doing the run of the play? Did you continue working on
Absolutely. I remember about 2 days before I left saying, "That's how that line should be said." But because the book was so thin, it was really a play that was conjured out of nothing, literally, and that was its charm. But that character was quite thin, and so I had honed it down to, you know, in comedy, to get a laugh was just literally how you turned your head at a certain moment, or how long that was fascinating, to try to get something.
That's how you really learned in the theater.
Yeah, and so I was always working at it. And Jim was very good at saying, "Well, if you really want to get a laugh here, try this," you know, which I had not known about. And that's always great, like what Mike can do.
Yeah.
How long did Barnum run? That had a long run.
I was in it for 9 months.
Because a lot of people wonder, how do you bear to be in anything?
It ran much longer than that.
But how can you bear to be even for that long in a play? A lot of people are puzzled by how you keep up a level of energy.
Let it happen.
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
I know. I wish your show was still going. Yeah. Well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we do. We go 8 times a week to the theater, and we try to make it look like it's the first time we've done it. That's our craft. And if you can't do that, you might as well not try to get into
Possibly
theater.
the most important thing that
Because also, even if you have material that is not Shakespeare, and it's not, you know, like something like Barnum, you're always working at something because you have the audience. and you have your fellow actors, and you're trying to, you're trying to make something work. I find that the hardest thing in an extended run is getting myself to the theater. Once I'm there, it's wonderful. But actually getting, especially in spring, the sun is these gentle, wonderful spring evenings, and everyone's coming home and having dinner, and you have to go out and go down to the theater. It's hard.
And your husband, you're leaving.
Yeah, your husband's sitting there having a drink.
That's the hard part.
And
your husband is in Paris at the Ritz, where you should be at the very moment.
Do we come to you
That's
now?
the discipline of it too. I feel like theater, you get back to the craft, and you get back to the discipline, and you earn. I feel like when I come back to theater, then I earn a right to maybe go and do another movie or something. Then you can get your Winnebago for a little while. But
Mike
in
Nichols
theater,
taught you a
different.
lot, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
Over in London. Your
Absolutely.
first
And
time.
here, too.
Yes.
He's so smart. He directs with such love. That's the
Yeah.
wonderful thing that I'm sure you noticed as well. There's such encouragement and love. He's so protective of his actors. He doesn't let anybody else, talk to us about anything or let us know any bad news of any kind, when we're rehearsing. And he's just so open about it. Every time there was a problem during rehearsal, he said, let's go back to the table then and talk about it. And we go back and sit down and read the play again. And he's also so loving toward the playwright. He would constantly say, Andrew, what do you think? Is that what you meant there? Or maybe, well, you found this. Andrew, what do you think? Should we expand that a bit?
Yes.
I mean, there was never the feeling that we weren't all in this totally together and equally as collaborators.
What's his own feeling? You must know. I have no idea about himself having wanted to be a playwright or any of that because of this intense sympathy. And after all, at the beginning, he and May were writing their own material, and they're intensely creative on that level, on a literary level, so he plainly could do it. But did he ever talk about that?
No, he never did. He never mentioned any of that with us. But he's clearly, so able.
Yeah.
Clearly.
One of the most moving things that I will never forget about Mike Nichols is when we went into tech rehearsals for The Real Thing, and we had an extremely intricate set. It was on a revolve, and the whole idea was they wanted to make it almost cinematic in the quickness of how the scenes were changed. In absolute darkness, you would all of a sudden, in split seconds, see a totally new set, and to achieve that technically was very difficult, and Tony Walton built this brilliant set. But when we got into text, Mike poured that kind of love and attention onto the technicians. And he would let them do it again and again to give them not only a chance to perfect what they were good at, and to let them give to the production in that way. And it was just magnificent. That they'd run the set in darkness, and he'd say, "No, I saw a little glint of something. Now, where was it? Was it this ashtray? Was it this corner of this book here?" And again and again and again, and just sitting there and giving the stagehands a sense of their worth.
Aidan,
was wonderful.
you worked with some interesting directors in Chicago, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell us about them.
Well, Bob Falls, who directed Hamlet, was probably...
How did you get to Chicago?
What do you mean?
Not by train, but I mean, what brought you to Chicago?
Through my mother's...
Okay.
I mean, what do you mean, what brought me back at that time? I still live in Chicago. I have a little apartment here, but
And did you study there?
Yeah, I started off studying there. And I love Chicago.
All right, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt. That's a standard question.
No.
Were you at the Goodman or the
No,
Steppenwolf
Bob
or-
Falls, actually John Malkovich directed me in a play.
That's what I thought. I
that-
think he's a marvelous director, isn't
Yes,
he?
yes, he is. And that gave me my equity card,
Yes.
which was one of these...
Which play was that?
Shirley Basin, what it actually was you rehearsed for a week and then you performed it for a week with the script in hand and staging, but it was equity and everything. And I was the only man, and there was 13 women in it. So it was a good introduction to professional theater. So Bob Falls is an incredible director, the man who directed Hamlet. He now runs the Goodman.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much theater in Chicago. It's fantastic. Chicago and then Seattle, which has something like 20 theater groups in that comparatively small city. But Chicago, in history, has always been great for theater.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be surprising to us Hicks on this side of the Appalachian Mountains that there's something coming out of Chicago every little while.
I think a lot of it has to do with economics. Economics. That's why there's so much theater there, because it's so much more economically feasible.
Also, there are wonderful audiences in Chicago.
Yes.
They respond. They're quick.
Uh-huh.
It's marvelous to do comedy to them. They laugh spontaneously.
Uh-huh.
And
Is this an ethnic distinction of some kind? They're quicker than we are?
I think so. I think New Yorkers are very critical.
You've always
No.
done off-Broadway. Is there any
Yeah.
reason for that? Do you feel happier off-Broadway?
I think I do. I've never had the experience, so I don't know. But the reason I haven't done Broadway is no one ever offered at this point. But I think I would like to do Broadway sometime. But I think it's an enormous. I don't know. Broadway. It's so big, and now because of maybe ticket prices and stuff, maybe I have a wrong view of it, a cliched view. I mean, I would feel like you'd have to be so funny or something. You know what I mean? It's like
So extra special.
The fact is that the difference between Broadway and off-Broadway now is practically metaphysical, because it has nothing to do with anything except certain rules that have been set up.
Yeah.
So that in terms of it's being intimidating, you would think it wouldn't have had that happen at all.
Yeah.
Plainly, Maurice, you're not frightened of it.
No, although I'm one of those, I like touring. I love touring. I don't like to stay in one place too long. I think, though, it's become very serious on Broadway. I will not come back to Broadway for a long, long time. I've made these announcements on stages and at the end of my show. I'm always surprised when I get invited on shows, because I don't say a lot of things people want me to say a lot of the times. And I think Broadway right now, with all my friends are in Big Deal, and they were very concerned about Fosse's show, that the matinee now is $47.50. I think that it's become, I think the ticket prices for the audiences now are obscene. And I don't think, because when you go, I know from my viewpoint, I have a lot of friends who want to come, and a lot of my family, live in Harlem and Philadelphia. And by the time they get a babysitter, dinner, park the car, it's no longer fun. And so I find when I got on Broadway, my whole life has been geared to pleasing an audience. I mean, that's how my grandmother was a Cotton Club showgirl. I have all this tradition. And it's all about being grateful you're there and pleasing them. So I find when the audiences come to Broadway, they come there after paying that $47.50. They sit there like this. So I walk out there and I say, 'cause I got criticized by a couple of the critics. Say, Maurice never stops dancing, even on the curtain calls. He's dancing. He goes on, for that $47.50, I'm dancing till that curtain goes down. That's just my way. And I think that it's, I have a whole thing about critics. I mean, they're angry at me now, and the whole thing about that, and the personal part. I can get you lots of stuff. You don't know.
No,
So
nobody's really angry at you anymore.
I don't know. I'd like to come back to Broadway, but I want to, you know what I'm doing? I'm going to go into a theater in Brooklyn. There's a theater in Brooklyn. 3,800 seats.
Somebody here from Brooklyn.
You're from Brooklyn? I was raised in Brooklyn, so I'm going back to Flatbush Avenue, because theater is everywhere. It ain't just on Broadway. So I'm going to Flatbush Avenue, this theater, where people can pay $20, $25, and see a show and enjoy themselves and still have money to eat for the week. I want to do that.
This brings me to having to say, we have to go into the role of agent. What is your agent going to say about you not doing a Broadway show or going back to Brooklyn? And then I want to talk about the role of agents in your careers and how they help or hinder. Let's start with you.
My agent, they work for me. I don't work for them. They represent me. So we talk about it, and I make a decision. He was upset. He asked me, Shelley Schultz at ICM, he asked me, do you want to come back to Broadway? He offered me a couple of other shows to come back, and I said, no, I don't. I said, I'd like to do, after hearing Marlo about the television series, I don't know about the series they want me to do now. But I'm going to do that, and I need to make a power base so I can do other things, you know. But my agents, and my manager, Stanley Kay, they more or less listen to what I have to say and advise me, but the decision is mine.
Can we talk about agents? How you got an agent and what role they play in your life? How do they help mold your career?
My agents usually just stare at me with their mouths open because, I don't know, I have had this kind of odd career. I always seem to be walking away from where everybody else is going. And when I walked away from my television series, everybody said, well, that's just insane, you just don't do that. But I didn't want to do it anymore. And when I took off a few years ago to study with Lee Strasberg, I was going to study for 1 year. I don't know, somehow 4 years went by because I knew that I needed to go deeper, that I could do what I had been doing since Barefoot in the Park, and continue to do that, or I could figure out what else was inside of me and how to get there. You know, it's that awful thing about seeing it but not knowing how to get there. Mm-hmm. And so I went to see Lee Strasberg, and he said, of course, come in. And I said, I'd like to take a year off of my career. And my agents all said, no, no, no. And I said, yes, yes, yes. And then it was 4 years. And I learned so much. It was exciting work. Everybody said, my God, you haven't worked in 4 years. I said, are you kidding? I've been doing Ibsen and Strindberg and Chekhov and things that nobody would ever have let me anywhere near. The movie, Nobody's Child, is a character I never could have gotten anywhere near had I not studied with Lee. And so I think agents are wonderful. They get you very good deals when you figure out what it is you want to do. That's what I have found them very good at. As far as understanding your own journey, I don't really think I've ever found an agent who understood the journey, where you want to go, how you want to express yourself. It's so terribly personal that it has nothing to do with career. And I think your whole life as an actor, it's the struggle between work and career. And at some point, I think we all pick work as where you have to grow and not your career.
That's true of all the arts in extraordinary ways.
I know, but you're not here just to enjoy it.
I don't think anybody ever said it better than you've just said it now. That's really beautiful. Because the lucky artist in writing in any field is when the journey and the career happen to go in the same direction at the same time, and everybody said, God, that looks easy.
Yes.
And it isn't like that at all.
No.
It's a consequence of having to make them go the same way. But that is beautiful.
Thank you.
Isabel, could I leave the agents for a minute? I'm very curious about Sam Shepard. Do you know him?
Yeah. What do you want to know about?
Can you fix her up?
Tell us about him. What kind of person is he?
Sam?
Yeah, Sam. Knows him well.
Okay. Mr. Shepard is a very nice man. He's as a director, he's very laid back. He gives the actors a tremendous amount of rein to just experiment, to just experiment and stuff. Sam is very down to earth in a lot of ways. I mean, he likes to go out and throw a few back, shoot a little pool, you know. He's funny.
He's a member of the human race.
Yes. Yeah, I like Sam. I don't know.
He gets a tremendous amount of work done, which is wonderful in the course of being a member of the human race.
Yeah.
And it seems almost inexhaustible. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
I always think of him as compiling this immense mosaic that someday will be one gigantic play, just Shepard.
Yeah.
It would be called.
Yeah.
And it'd be almost Wagnerian, and people can play it all in pieces.
Yeah.
Not unlike what I guess Robert Wilson is accumulating in a different way.
Yeah.
But it is a thrilling thing that he's able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
When he directs, does he explain the play? Because
No.
Very good question.
I never quite understand his plays.
Do you, as an actor, understand?
Not really.
Most
Take the
everything I have to. If I don't, I pretend like I do.
Well, what Marlo said is true of him, too. Shepard always was on his journey, and it just happened that he's now become really what amounts to fashionable.
Yes.
But that's not going to alter his journey.
No.
It may even do harm to his
That's
career,
right.
but the journey is going to be, I would think, paramount
His
with him
own.
always.
And his
Yeah.
own.
And that's tremendous. That's
Yes.
wonderful. He doesn't need to explain anything. It's for us to worry about that, or somebody in 100 years if they want it.
Yeah.
And he also, like Maurice, who says he doesn't want Broadway. He likes to do his plays only off Broadway.
Yes.
And
Glenn?
that's too bad for Broadway.
Well, his influence is felt on Broadway. That's the
Yes, but we
important
need those theaters open.
That's right. Glenn, you want to talk just a little bit about your agent and your role and your journey? Because you started us on a lovely phrase and a very important one, too. Where did you study?
I didn't study, really. I went to William and Mary in Virginia and was a member of the theater department there. But my favorite courses weren't in the theater, though I did a lot of theater. They have a wonderful Phi Beta Kappa Hall there. And what I loved about that, I was older when I went to college, so I really knew what I wanted. I knew I'd always wanted to be an actress, but life had kind of taken me in other directions for a while. But I also wanted to know a lot of other stuff. I studied philosophy and anthropology and biology, and I was really thrilled by it. But at the same time, for the first time, I was able to do concentrated theater. So I count that, and I also had a wonderful mentor there, Howard Scammon, who I think sensed my...
In the theater department?
Yes. Sensed my seriousness, and in that arena was able in a wonderful way to guide me.
Did you study voice at the same time? Because you must have.
No,
worked
I studied
hard on
voice.
your
I studied voice several years after I came to New York. But what Howard did for me is he got me to increase my speaking range, so you can have a wide range of vocal speaking. Not. I learned that one summer doing outdoor theater, The Common Glory, down in Williamsburg, a play about Thomas Jefferson, and it was it seated over 2,000 people, and there were no mics. So I learned to talk like this. To project deeper and deeper. So the journey overwhelms me. I don't know even where to begin to talk about my journey. I still feel like I'm in the beginning of my journey. I still feel very hungry about what I want to fulfill in myself. I don't know where that hunger came from, and I don't particularly want to know, but it's there. And I got a bit of a beating this past year. But I must say, getting into movies was one thing, but I always come back to theater. And I'd done 2 movies in a row last year and went back to the Harold Clurman Theater on 42nd Street and did a play that was a grand experience.
Which was
The French
Childhood, yes.
Yes.
But I took a major beating for my movie Maxie, which I did. I worked very hard on it, and I loved that character, 2 characters that I played. And I believed in that, and I still believe in that. I thought it was, for what it was a wonderful movie. But it was the first time that I'd been viciously attacked personally.
I don't know why, because you were great in it. You really
I don't
were.
know. I'm not, I have no apologies to make.
No.
But the thing is that for the first time, they struck me at my very core, where you ask yourself, have I been fooling myself all these years? And you lose your heart, and I'd never lost my heart.
See?
But it took me a while to recover from that. And I've always had said, I've always have been very picky about what I've chosen. It had to be something that reached me, and I thought had some value. And I thought, if anything, going through all that just made that stronger, because I realized that there always will be people who will tell you you're wonderful, and then they'll tell you you're horrible. It's going to be a huge cycle. And if you don't just choose from your heart and from your soul your journey, then you have nothing, because that's the only thing we have to go by, is who we are and what we choose and how we choose to do it. And so it kind of burned that, you know, it kind of was like all the other stuff was burned away, and it was simplified in my mind. But it was very hard to go through.
Isn't it amazing that afterward we are grateful even for anguish?
Yeah.
It seems so strange, but it's always the case. We would not have suffered, it turns out, after the fact, although it was unbearable almost at the moment
That's
of
a
it.
very important point that you raise, and how you work with criticism and how you react to it. Could we go around and just... No, I'll leave you out. I know if that's important. We have enough time.
I don't think so.
How do you react to criticism? How do you react to a review? You.
Well,
Hey.
I think, you know, basically you go, okay, if I'm going to believe the good ones, then I better believe the bad ones. So you just, I think you can't give the press the power to define who you are or to destroy you. You just cannot do that, because if you do, they will. And they will also, I think a lot of times with actors that are just becoming very well known and very well respected, they get overblown up, and then they gotta knock them down, you know. So, but meanwhile, while I say that, when I do a play and I open the review, I don't read the review, I look for my name. And then I read the review.
Same thing in the movie?
I mean, so you are affected by it. I've sometimes gotten, there's a couple times where I've gotten terrible reviews where I totally agreed with the critic. And I just said, he's right. He's absolutely right. I was lost and in plays and stuff. So I haven't had the worst experiences like. So I haven't had horrible experiences like that yet. I remember my first review. Didn't
matter at all, but...
No. I was a replacement in this play. It was my first play. And I had actually done it originally in a workshop, and then they figured they needed a Chicago name to get it to be a hit. So, and then I replaced him, and this college newspaper journalist kid came out, and he said Aidan Quinn is plays a bumbling young poet in a bumbling, mumbling manner. I cut it out, and I put it on my wall, and it has fueled me for many years. That was my first review.
And I hope you stop mumbling.
We don't know that he was mumbling. That was only a goddamn critic who said that.
I think the young actors mumble too much. I really do. I think they should.
We haven't
speak
touched
clearly.
on your...
Oh, and am I glad?
Your reaction.
Well, I've had a very strange month. I was practically canonized for Nobody's Child and assassinated for Social Security. So it was very odd. I mean,
you have to be assassinated before you can be canonized.
I got the other way this month.
Very rare.
It was a very strange month. And I realized, you know, my father used to always say, you know, don't. In fact, he had a poem about criticism. It ended with, and if there isn't anyone criticizing you, then you haven't done very much. So I kind of take that to heart, but it hurts. Of course it hurts. And the truth is that you do take it to your heart, and sometimes it can clip your wings a little. And I think the greatest accomplishment you can have as an artist is to not allow it to clip your wings. Yes, it's going to hurt your feelings, and you're going to cry. I cry. I also cry when they're good. I'm so happy that somebody has recognized my work and that it's grown or that it got the character. It's a thrill for me. A thrill when somebody comes backstage after the play and says, I saw Social Security, I saw Nobody's Child, and my family had this, and you did it exactly the way it was. There's nothing like that in the world, because that's what you've struggled for. That's what you struggled for in Maxie, whether somebody liked it or not. I didn't see it, but I'm sure I would have liked it, because I love your work. So and I know whatever you did, it was from you, and it was truthful.
Yeah.
And that's what we're struggling for, is this great truth. And if somebody says you weren't truthful, it's a sin, because all you want is to be truthful, you know. But not to allow it to clip you. I think what Glenn so beautifully, the way she put it, made me cry just to hear her, because I know that feeling, and it does slow you down. And the greatest accomplishment is to not allow it to slow.
Well, that's the important
slow
thing,
you
is
down.
not allow it.
Yes.
And I do not have any control of this, but right now we have to stop and take a break. No, we're coming back. We're coming back. So please don't go away. We're just going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to Working in the Theater. Don't go away. We're continuing with the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theater. These seminars are coming to you from the City University Graduate Center of New York, and as I've said again and again, right in the heart of Times Square, right where the theater is. Today's seminar is on the performance, and we have a wonderful panel, and I will ask if briefly we can continue with it and have Brendan Gill and Jean Dalrymple, our co-moderators, introduce once more the panel to you. And then we're going to go on with questions from the audience, and we have loads of questions to ask these wonderful panelists. Jean and Brendan, will you just quickly introduce your panelists, please?
Yes, on my far right is Aidan Quinn, and nearest to me is Glenn Close. And Jean?
On my left, way over there, is what is your name?
It's that first line. It's that first line.
Marlo Thomas. Maurice Hines.
Well, I'm Isabel Stevenson, and I'm president of the American Theatre Wing, and as such, I'm going to say, please come up and ask the first question. And would you say to whom the question is directed?
Okay, my name is Jamie Simon, and my question is for basically Marlo, but Glenn can throw something in if she feels like it. And I have a master's in dance, and I think you're all wonderful, but that's okay. Do you feel that it's better for an actress to keep herself open to more than one thing, like in commercials, film, theater, if she desires to or possibly can, or better to focus in on one aspect?
You mean one medium? Is that what you mean?
Like for just theater.
I don't know how Glenn feels, but I would think that most of us want to just go where the good material is and where the good parts are, and whether it's in television or film or stage, wherever it is that you can grow and learn some more about what you can do. You know, I think in the early part of your career, you work to show what you can do, and as you get older, you work to learn what you can do, and that depends on where the part is.
I agree.
Thank you.
My name is Victor Brock. I'm the one person from Brooklyn who applauded before. Okay. I also work with Manhattan Arts. My question was directed to Maurice. Ray, the statement he made earlier about going back to Brooklyn, to Flatbush to perform, but it's really for anybody who is an actor, and it also concerns a little bit of perhaps the relationship between actors and power structure, which is something else I think he was getting at. Do actors have any responsibility to, and should they, become more involved in helping to deal with the power structure in the theater, whether it's through major theater or legitimate institutions such as universities, Brooklyn College, NYU, etc., to help promote more local community theater as well as regional theater? And if so, how can they do that?
It's a long question.
Yeah, myself, that's part of what I want to do. I want to go back to my community. I was raised in Harlem, and I've been going up there a lot recently and seeing theater up there. And I want to go back and start a children's school and do all that. That's part of my journey, you know. But I think the system as it stands in the theater for me, coming from my viewpoint, it amazed me. And this was not among the actors, and certainly not a lot of people, but there was a lot of racism that I found in the theater, in the system of the very heavy financial, the big productions, especially coming from a dance background and having to listen to my friends who I still take 3 classes a day. And I still see the struggle that the black dancer goes through and the black actor goes through. You know, I'm great friends with Howard Rollins, and he's a brilliant actor and can get a movie every 3 years. It's ridiculous. And so I'm very involved and become politically aware of that. And so I need to go back into theater, into regional theater. Among actors, I find, which is a wonderful thing for me, no racism at all, I found, because we're about quality work and working with each other.
Will you go back and create theater in your community?
There's no doubt about it. I have to. I'm driven to. That's my hunger. Now, that's what I'm going to do.
That's wonderful.
Next question.
My name is Grace Naughton, and I have a question for Glenn Close. After you go through something as difficult as you went through, how do you get your heart back?
First of all, you have wonderful friends. And if you're lucky, you have a great family. And you go back to those people. And then it just, time does its thing, as it always does, you know. How do I get it back? I refuse not to believe, you know. I don't know if I can really answer that question. I think it's a very difficult business when you're starting. It's difficult when you're just starting to get known. It's sometimes even more difficult when you're getting a lot known because you never want to lose yourself and your sense of proportion, your sense of where you are. And it's a constant journey. That's why I didn't know even where to begin to talk about it, because it's something that's a constant factor in your life.
One thing I'd like to interrupt to say, Glenn and I were talking before during the intermission about Benefactors, her play, which is on Broadway, and contrary to what anybody could have believed about a play as serious as Benefactors, that it is run month after month after month, that it's a really big hit. And it's not a play which is sympathetic to the ordinary Broadway audience, if there is such a thing. It is the actors in that play that have made that play a hit. And it is Glenn's character, and the character of the other people too, but Glenn's character as a human being is such a strong factor in that. And I've no doubt that part of the anguish that you felt is also able to translate itself into the performance you give in Benefactors. And that is what the audience is responding to, and that's why it's a hit. It's the most optimistic sign on Broadway that Broadway has had in years, that play is running like that. But it springs from you people putting it on. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
While you're talking about what we talked about before we came on, Glenn mentioned the long run and the difference between the run in the middle when the director came back and pulled up the entire cast again. Not that they felt that they needed it. They didn't know that they needed it. I think if you would just touch on that for a minute, it would be most helpful.
Well, we opened we started our first preview on the 12th of December. We opened on the 22nd. And our director, who was English, had to go back to London and start rehearsals for and open another show. And so we were children without a father for 3 months. Usually a director comes back and kind of brings a wonderfully objective perspective on everything, which you very much need. But we were kind of on our own for 3 months, 3.5 months. And we felt a great need for him. We went through all kinds of different configurations because it's a very close company, and you're bound to kind of, you know, metamorphose together. But so it was a great relief when he came back because he was able to look at it with a clear eye and say, that doesn't work, that does work, go back to what you did before. I like, you know, and we just, it gave us a great new
Is that happening in Social Security?
Yes, Mike calls it taking out the improvements. Yes, he does. He comes back. We've only been open a few weeks, but he's already been back and taken out some of the improvements.
I guess that's one of the things that do not take place in either movies or television that you've been talking about. The performance is there and it's frozen.
That's right.
They just put the camera on somebody else.
That's right. Just haunts you forever.
Next question.
My name is Angela Littleton, and my question is for Aidan Quinn. I wanted to know if your thoughts become the thoughts of your character while you're on the stage. I mean, I realize you have to think about, blocking and whatnot, but do you find yourself thinking what that character would be thinking just before you say your lines?
Yeah, I think to a large extent, it's one of the things about that you learn through working is that sometimes, especially in the long run, and we're talking about doing 8 shows a week, and you've done over 100 performances, sometimes you can't be fully there every night and every moment, and sometimes, but just if you go through the process of like hitting the buttons of the thought process, you can find yourself there emotionally and physically, even with your mind is like oh, I said that? I did that? So sometimes, yeah, I think to a large extent, but sometimes you can be thinking about, other things too, but to a large extent, I
Do
think.
you ever have performances where that second voice is screaming in your ear, and you're trying to concentrate, and for somebody says, "Oh, look, your hair looks lousy. What's that person doing down the second row? That was all right, but let's see if you can do better in a few lines. You might forget the next line."
Okay.
That's true. Or you look out and you see like a friend or an actor, and you go.
Or you hear them.
As I was saying, yeah.
That's crazy. That can happen if you just get very tired.
Yeah.
I think so.
What do you do when you see that actor in your friend and it pulls you out of the part? What do you call upon?
Well, when it's when I was talking about a particular incident with me when there's a section of the play where I sort of look out this way and I look across, and I had just worked with Robert De Niro a year ago in a film, and I think he's one of the great actors of all time, and he's also a good friend, so I admire him, and I didn't know he was there, and I looked out and I saw him, I went let's get it going, Aidan.
Sometimes when I was doing Nathan Detroit, I had no technique as an actor, but I became my Uncle Sid, who used to run numbers up in Harlem. Uncle Sid. So, and Nathan was this shifty guy. So it was a lot of black people who came to see it in Washington. And in the gospel church, when you're really singing, they do this. You know what I'm talking about, baby? They do this. So I got it. I'm really Nathan Detroit. I'm doing this line. Me and Debbie are doing this scene. All of a sudden, we had to look out at the audience. Oh, we saw a bunch of hands going. We knew we had made it, baby. The gospel way. It was wonderful.
Next question.
My name is Murtis Mixon, and I'm a novice actor. And my question is for Marlo Thomas. And my daughter's journey was influenced when she was about 5 by your album, Free to Be You and Me. And I was wondering how your journey has been influenced by that, or whether that journey is a sub-journey too.
No, that's pretty much the center of what I've always felt, is that you have to be free to be who you are and not listen to any other voice but your own. And I made that album for my niece. She was the first baby born of the offsprings of my parents and my siblings. And so when she was born, I was so disappointed in what my sister was reading to her. And I said, this is the same stuff that we read. The prince is going to come along and kiss you and everything's going to be all right. And it never happened in my lifetime, so I don't think we should keep passing this stuff on. So anyway, so I created this piece, and I was going to do it myself, but I'm I'm not a bad producer. So as I got going, I thought, oh, this would be better if Carol Channing would do it, and Dustin Hoffman would be better at this, and Diana Ross could sing this better than I could. And so I put together this album, and Mel Brooks and I did the baby voices and so forth. And it was really all about being free, and it was about not caring what race you were or what sex you were. It was mostly about race and sex. And it inspired children, but it inspired me as well, because I got to say what I wanted to say. I got to express in a funny and entertaining way something that I have been trying to say since I was a child. When I was 10 years old, I wrote a little pamphlet called Women Are People Too, which my mother has framed because I'm from a big Lebanese and Italian family where women are kind of told to be quiet and go into the kitchen. And so I spent my entire life struggling through that. And so I had this need to say, you know, it depends on what, it matters what's inside of you, which isn't a brand new thought, but somehow it hadn't been passed on to children early enough so that we wait till we're about 30 to figure it out, and then we start fighting backwards, you know. So I wanted to give it to my little niece right away. And I must say, she's fabulous. She's 15, and she's president of her student body, and she beat out 3 boys, and I just get...
Maury Bleifeld here with a question for Aidan Quinn. How is doing a Sam Shepard play different from that of any other author?
He's like Shakespeare.
No, there is a difference in a certain way. Shepard, to do Shepard, I think, right, it's very difficult because there's leaps in logic that you cannot just go on a method naturalistic, this equals this equals this or this. You have to go beyond the material in a certain way, because in a certain way his writing is not confined by that kind of logic. So you too, as the actor, cannot confine yourself to just being believable, you know. You have to go out on the limb. So I think that's basically the major difference.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Mathias, and my question is for Glenn Close. If you do not have much technical training, then what do you rely on for your characterizations in order to keep the performances fresh?
I think I have a lot of technical training, for one thing. I learned technical training when I did theater at William and Mary, even though it wasn't a theater school as such. I was with people who knew about that kind of thing. I've always thought that a lot of technique was just common sense. And I've also been very lucky to have worked with wonderful people who I have learned from and watched. Beyond that, how to keep something fresh?
Yes, like performance after performance. If you don't, because I'm studying right now in school, and I'm learning how to keep going, and to make it look like it's new every time.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of a wonderful intangible. I think, first of all, you have to love what you're doing, and you have to love the audience every night, that new strange creature that you're going to meet. And also you have your concentration has to be within the mind of that character. And I sometimes will think of very, very specific things before I go on stage. So like, have I just come from a car? Is it raining? What's the feeling that I bring in? So it's very specific, so that you use your imagination all the time. And if you use your imagination, you can keep fresh. And as you are that day, and as your imagination influences you that day, that's how you will walk out onto the stage.
Thank you.
I'm going to use my prerogative as president and ask a question that is usually asked during the seminars but hasn't been touched on here that much. How much leeway does an actor have with a director in the performance? How do you work out, and how does each director have a different way? Does each actor react differently to the director? Who has, not the last word, but who has the most influence in the molding of the part for you?
Ask that of Marlo, because she's worked with a real master director.
Well, Glenn's worked with the same one, but I'll be happy to take a shot at it.
Well, she just was talking, so I was
yes,
giving you
thank
a
you.
chance.
I think it's collaborative. You know, good directors, Mike, Lee Grant, and for two that I've worked with this year, they watch to see what you're going to do. They want to see where you're going. And as you're going, they start moving you to the left a little or to the right a little, carefully, because they don't want to stop you from anything that's going to be coming out instinctively and what you're working on all the time. Because the minute an actor decides to do a part, they start right away thinking, how does this fit in with my own problem solving of my life, where I'm going, what this means to me, who this is. I mean,
So
that's
that
very good technique, your
collaboration
uncle,
once
you
more.
know.
Yeah, I didn't even know it at the time.
Yes, I think it is. I think it is collaborative. If it's a good director, I think good directors are watching for what the artist is bringing. And then they'll say, you know, maybe that's the wrong right there, but they wait a while, don't you?
Yeah, I think good directors
Yes.
are collaborators
Yes.
and make you. But also, I think it's a good thing to not take anything personally.
Yeah.
Especially the first 2 weeks of rehearsal.
Yeah.
I find, because I worked with Joe Layton also in a show, Bring Back Birdie, and I find most of the directors that work with me, because I'm a dancer, and Joe, of course, is a choreographer too, and Nathan Detroit, I worked with a wonderful director. It's terrible, I can't remember his name. Jerry.
That's okay, it'll come to
It'll
you
come
tomorrow.
because I love him. But he dealt with me on a physical thing. So he wanted Nathan Detroit to be like a fox, to be that. So he gave me physical things because he knew I was going to come from that way. Directors always have to bring me back because I always, and they tell me they prefer it rather than try to make me go this way, you know.
Would you comment on that?
Yeah, I think ultimately, you know, those are the best experience I've had when it's a very collaborative thing. Because when the structure, I mean, the director has to have a vision and the thing of what he's doing and try to bring you within that. But ultimately, the actor, it's the actor. I'm directing something right now, and I can't block it because I don't want to stop. I just don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to stop.
Right.
I don't want to. I want to say that's the way it's got to be. You know, because ultimately, I could give the actor, I said, you say this line for this reason. And I'm not, he doesn't have to. His brain is free. His spirit is free. So ultimately, I think it's best when the actors create the blocking out of natural, instinctive things to rehearsal that are shaped somewhat by the director. And
Next question. I think we have time for just one more.
My name is Stephanie Zagorin. This is for Ms. Thomas. Could you share with us the work process you used in preparing Nobody's Child and Social Security? In a way that we could learn something from it. I know
Yes.
everybody's acting technique is very personal.
Yes. Well, Nobody's Child had kind of three parts to it. There was the whole intellectual research to find out, to talk to the doctors, to go to the hospitals and speak to Marie herself. She's alive, and so it was wonderful to play somebody that had been through it. And she also had written a manuscript of her own, her diaries, her letters, the prayers she had written all through those years in the institution. So I had all of that kind of got me together. And then there was the physical work, you know, the limp and the hand cramping and the feet cramping and all of the symptoms that she had, not only from her diseases, but from the over-medication that she had been through. So there was that. And then the third, and the most exciting part, really, was finding the demons inside myself and opening the doors and letting them out and scaring the hell out of myself so that I could play with her fears. And it was a most exciting experience because we all have those doors we've locked with skeleton faces and bones and said, don't come in. And we open them up and look at them. And that's the great thing about being an actor, that whether you've studied or you haven't studied, that's where you have to go, is inside of yourself in this way. And when you go in there and open those up, sometimes you heal a couple. Not all of them, but a couple of them. Because anything that you look at, it's just like being a child. Everything is a shadow. And when you start to look at it, it isn't quite as terrible after a while. But for the 8 weeks that we filmed it, you know, my husband kept saying, I can't wait till this is over, because I kept waking up crying and screaming, and I had to really upset myself and upset the things that I had hidden from. I don't know, maybe there is another more impersonal technique somewhere that works for some folks, but this is the one that not only does it help you grow as an artist, but it helps you grow as a person. And I think what Brendan was saying about Glenn's performance, that it is fed by what she had to go through, I think that's true. I think we all do that. We become better people by becoming better artists, and it goes around and around in a circle. It feeds your life, it feeds your work, it feeds your life, it feeds your work. And I think we're so lucky for that, George Burns is my patron saint. And when I was growing up, I wanted to be an actress, and my father didn't want me to. And George Burns is a very good friend of my dad's, and he used to always say at the dinner table, Woody wanted to be a milliner. There is no other world other than yours.
I think once more I'm going to have to interrupt. And I just can't tell you how I hate doing this, because I want to go on and on, but I think your message summed it all up on what it is to work in the theater. And I think that's the important thing of what the theater brings to you and what you in turn then bring to the audience. These are the American Theater Wing seminars that are coming to you from the City University Graduate Center of New York. And the panel today is on the performance, and how they work in the theater. And I don't know when I've seen so much concern and competence and kindness in sharing what these wonderfully gifted and talented and hardworking people have given to us. And I am so proud to be president of the American Theater Wing, and proud that we are able to bring the kind of people to the seminars to talk about working in the theater. Thank you very much for being here.
I would decide to do it going to set my but I'm not bad for the best there do as I so go and God handle this and I thought better to be but Shan Carroll do it and do it with Dustin and would be hopper at the better in a row dying sing us good than